Fundamentally, I think you all know that nonprofits deal with society's most difficult problems, and they do it with very few resources. And that problem is getting worse. You've heard of the new normal. Economists talk about it. The fact of the matter is that as healthcare costs continue to escalate for a variety of reasons, there's going to be less discretionary spending available for virtually everything else that states and federal governments spend money on. And that means there's going to be less for higher ed, for early childhood education, for dealing with people in poverty, workforce development programs, arts programs, even fixing bridges and roads in Minnesota. It's going steadily down. And it's predictable because of the aging population and the increasing cost of health care. It says to me that we need to do business differently as nonprofits. We can't rely on even those strategies that were successful in the past. At least we can't rely on them alone. We need new ideas. And I've kind of thought about this for a long time and have, in starting Twin Cities Rise and in observing other really exemplary organizations I write about in the book, these kind of integrate principles from the for-profit world where I spent 22 years. And a couple of my old colleagues are there, and they'll say I did a good job running nonprofits as well when I was at General Mills. Don't laugh too hard, Joe. I mean, it's supposed to be a joke, okay? And marry it with the best ideas in the for-profit world, in the nonprofit world. And I believe by marrying ideas from both, you come up with not only synergy, but you develop something really special. And I've witnessed that in Twin Cities Rise. I've witnessed it in other great organizations from around the world. The book is framed around 7 operating principles that I believe exemplary organizations, both in the for-profit and in the nonprofit world, tend to practice. And I provide examples from about 10 of them. Some are very well known, like Habitat for Humanity, and others are hardly known at all around here, like Lumni or Playworks, or even Twin Cities Rise outside of Minneapolis. So let me just review those principles quickly. The first one is to have a clear and appropriate purpose, because purpose establishes an organization's rationale for existence. It's why an organization exists, and once it's established, it doesn't waver. It also expresses the passion that brings social entrepreneurs and nonprofit executives to work every day. A clear and appropriate purpose inspires, it guides, it energizes all associated with an organization. So why the focus on purpose in nonprofits? After all, organizations that tackle our greatest social problems know why they exist, right? The best organizations do more than that. They know their purpose, but they hold themselves accountable to that purpose. They hold themselves accountable to that purpose in everything they do, because they continually focus their efforts and resources on what will accomplish that purpose, and also what will not. Too many organizations, for-profits for that matter, and certainly many nonprofits, get sidetracked from their original intent. And we can talk about that a little more if you'd like. The second one is measure what counts. Metrics have a way of focusing our attention, whether it's return on investment or present value, as Ross loves, or SAT scores that colleges use to determine admissions. It's human nature to spend time and energy on those things that count. In the world of limited resources, however, it's critical to measure what counts, because we can't afford to focus our time, attention, and money on things that don't. Organizations get what they measure. To achieve a mission or a purpose, You have to focus your desired real-world outcomes, and you're going to hear a lot about outcomes, and you'll read about outcomes in the book. The results that actually fulfill your purpose. Getting a person off of welfare and into a minimum wage job may be an improvement, but does it significantly affect chronic poverty and concentrated poverty? At Twin Cities Rise, we don't think so. So the outcome we focus on is the number of participants who get and keep a job that has a salary that has averaged about $26,000 a year with benefits and keep it for at least 2 years. That we consider an outcome. We're very focused on outcomes. Many nonprofits, on the other hand, for a variety of reasons, focus on inputs and outputs rather than meaningful long-term outcomes. Inputs like the number of clients, the number of courses taken, the number of hours in training, and outputs like the number who graduate and the proportion who land any job. These metrics can all be useful, but they are not outcomes. It's a little like General Mills, my previous employer, focusing on how much wheat it buys, an input, or how many boxes of cereal it produces each day, an output, instead of how many boxes of Wheaties it sells to consumers, an outcome. They focus on the outcome. The inputs and the outputs are helpful, but they're not the bottom line. You can waste precious resources by investing in inputs and outcomes if they don't lead inputs and outputs if they don't directly lead to outcomes that reflect your purpose. Third, be market-driven. Now, sometimes I get things thrown at me when I say that in a large group of nonprofits. There are many elements of marketing, advertising, promotion, and the like, but the most important, in my opinion, is the one that's least understood by many traditional nonprofits, and that is serving your customer. Again, it's a matter of focus. Every nonprofit has important stakeholders, clients, donors, government, employees, society, with many and varied needs. But a market-driven organization recognizes only one group as its customer. Out of all your stakeholders, your customer is the one who, more than anyone else, determines your survival and success. And interestingly, your customer is not necessarily the people you serve. College Summit, a wonderful organization headquartered in Washington, D.C. that prepares young people for college while they're in high school, refers to the high school students that they're helping to get into college as their clients. Understanding their needs is really important to College Summit, but their customer is the school system, the superintendent, principals, teachers, and other staff. The schools pay to bring them in, although the amount is a fraction of their real cost. The success of College Summit's mission is determined more by the commitment of these customers more than anything else. And College Summit is always thinking about what their student clients need, but when they determine priorities, the school and its staff come first. Fourth, create mutual accountability. Successful organizations of all kinds practice mutual accountability. It's true of families, too. Think about your own. With every stakeholder, whether it's your staff, your donors, your clients, government, or participants. Mutual responsibilities are discussed up front, agreed upon, and revisited as necessary to maintain an equitable relationship. When each party is held accountable for their contribution to the venture, all parties are vested in its success and are more likely to be successful. This is especially true for clients, or as we call it at Twin Cities Rise, participants. When people get something for nothing, they don't value it. I'm not talking about gifts. I'm talking about relationships, commercial relationships, if you will. Mutual accountability ensures that clients value what they receive. They're more likely to fulfill their commitments and succeed in the long run. Accountability, in our opinion, is the bedrock of a successful life. For example, Habitat for Humanity homeowners help build houses, their own and usually someone else's, before they can move into their own house. Habitat believes that this principle of sweat equity, as they call it, turns a recipient into a partner. They believe that establishing mutual responsibility is not only the right thing to do for participants, but it builds community and also attracts donations. 5, support personal empowerment. Many organizations talk about empowerment as a feeling of self-confidence and optimism that people acquire in the course of participating in a program. At RISE, we found that that just isn't enough. By empowerment, we mean a particular set of cognitive and emotional skills coupled with a positive belief system. Using these, a person can manage their emotions, thinking, and behavior to achieve positive long-term life goals. Because of their positive beliefs about what is possible, empowered people don't sabotage themselves. Rather, they make choices that optimize potential benefits to themselves and society. Achieving this degree of empowerment requires significant long-term training for our participants, some as long as 13 months. Like many of our nonprofit colleagues, we work with people whose families have lived in poverty for generations. Individuals who are raised in this generational poverty frequently feel victimized, powerless, or even entitled. As our participants grew up, they learned a whole set of beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that enabled them to live in that culture, survival skills that have now become counterproductive. For change to endure, people must transform themselves to stop feeling powerless and start taking responsibility for their actions, to stop feeling hopeless about their future and start seeing better possibilities within their own grasp. We have found that the personal resiliency, perseverance, and positive sense of self that participants acquire through empowerment training is the most important factor in their success in the program, at work, and in life. 6, create economic value from social benefit. As a society, we're accustomed to thinking about social good in terms of moral imperative rather than economic benefit. But every improvement in social good does, in fact, have monetary value. To an individual, to the state, or to some other stakeholder. And in most situations, economists are able to assign a specific dollar value to that social benefit. Once we have that economic analysis, we can use it to develop new approaches to funding and financing our social initiatives. When RISE participants start earning a higher income, society benefits from increases in tax revenues and decreases in both public subsidies and the costs incurred, for example, in the criminal justice system. The ability to create economic value from social benefit has led to the Twin Cities RISE Pay for Performance contract that we have had with the state of Minnesota since 1997, and new innovative financing approaches that Art alluded to for social enterprises that are being experimented with, including the social impact bond in the United Kingdom and the human capital performance bond that passed the legislature and became a statute in July and will be piloted by the state of Minnesota. Recognizing the economic value of social good enables society to make better decisions about where to invest its limited resources and also allows the most successful organizations to grow. Finally, learning-driven. Great organizations aren't distinguished by getting it right the first time. Few do. I've never met one. Rather, they are learning-driven. To be learning-driven means you start your venture with a working model that makes sense based on your best thinking. Then you experiment, evaluate, adjust, experiment again, evaluate again, adjust again, and so on until you meet your outcome. It takes a willingness to continuously gather intelligence about the environment in which you operate and regularly question your assumptions and practices. A learning-driven approach is an ongoing part of a great organization's strategy and culture. Sometimes, of course, learning is forced upon us by outside forces, like the 2009 worldwide economic recession. Twin Cities Rise responded to the downturn by creating its successful internship program. But the best organizations don't wait for a crisis. They incorporate learning into their daily operations. Everything we do at Rise is subject to change if change can improve upon what we do. Being learning-driven requires that we understand the shifting needs of customers and other stakeholders, evaluate our processes and results, and consistently challenge the status quo. So those are the 7 principles that I believe exemplary organizations, wherever they are, practice